slide and tell you about myself and all of that, is I want you to just take a moment to think about how much you have practiced or done your event in the last 2 weeks. And you can close your eyes if you want to have some mental zen here, or you just take a moment and think about how many hours you have either been doing weight training, speed work, regular sport practice, tournaments. Just take a moment, think about how much time have you spent in training. And just take that in for a moment. And then you think about how much time have you, oh, somebody's unmuted. Thank you. And then think about how much time you've put into thinking about fueling yourself, preparing, looking maybe at the menus in the dining room, thinking about what you're going to grab at the fueling station, thinking about what you're going to have ready in your room when you're done for post practice or in your bag right after practice. How much time has that been? Has it been a lot? Has it been very little? So as we think about the pillars of the things that really increase performance, it isn't just training, right? We know that that's very important. We hear we need to train 10,000 hours to become, an expert at anything. But if we don't have the building blocks that are going in to help fuel that performance, then are all those hours going to really matter if we're not giving our top level performance when we're out there, or if we're injured, or if we're sick? So, all of those things. So, think about how much time you dedicate to training. And are you even like, and it's not to say that you're supposed to be like, thinking about eating or eating as much as you are training, but if you're only doing a fraction of that, that missing link, and maybe something that you should think about prioritizing. Okay, so here is Jenna and myself. Some of you already know who we are. It's really cool. I got to interface with one of your coaches, Brianna, who works in women's hockey. She was doing some work with the San Jose Sharks this season, this preseason, and it was just really great to see that interconnected between working with you all at Shattuck and then also the other work we do. So Jenna works with the Minnesota Timberwolves. She's the dietitian for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Wild. I had previously worked with the Minnesota Wild, and then I moved. And so I work with the San Jose Sharks, and I also work with the United States Performance Center. The United States Performance Center works with some of the smaller Olympic teams, and we worked everywhere in between. So while hockey and basketball are some of our main sports that we work in, I'm now working in sort of all sports, sports that I've never even thought about doing nutrition programming for, like one of them being table tennis. This is one of the teams that I'm working with, and it's really fascinating to learn about all the differences in sport and the different needs that are there. I'm an endurance athlete myself, so I run mountains and I run long time in mountains, and so knowing how to fuel for endurance sports is another specialty area that I have. So, and everything in between. There is a little link down here, so I know that that we'll be sending this out to you all so that you can have this presentation. But this is a little link for an article that Jenna just was a part of for USA Hockey, talking about fueling your face off and how do you really fuel that pre-workout or that pre-event. And we'll talk a little bit about that if you guys want to tonight. Okay, enough about us. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Supporting your performance and recovery, right? So fueling, your foundational fueling, what you put in is what you get out. And that's what I wanted you to take a moment on before, is to think about, are you putting any thought into what you're putting into your body? And even though you're all super young, it does still matter at that age on what your output's going to be. So being young helps you get past some of that. But if you were really being intentional about what your body needs and really fueling it at that level, how much better would your performance be, right? How much better would your recovery be? How much less injury or illness would you have? So that's what we're going to spend some time on. We're going to talk about, how you can prevent prolonged muscle soreness, support your body's total energy needs, especially because many of you are still growing. And some of you have body composition goals too, whether it's to gain lean body mass or to lose fat mass. All of you have different goals depending on what your sport is, but how do you do that healthy? And how do you also keep optimizing your overall growth? And then reduce muscular fatigue and poor performance mechanics, and then better athletic performance, period. I can't emphasize it enough. There really are, like this little gray box over here says, there's no prizes for underfueling and not prioritizing nutrition. And so it really, it's 3 to 4 main things, and I talk about it every time. Training, obviously, exercise and doing that, optimizing that, but also sleep, stress management, and nutrition. All four of those together really matter on getting your optimal performance out of your body. Okay, so what is fueling the foundation? So I put these questions up a lot too. I added a new one for this talk. I usually have you guys consider, what do you typically eat before and after practices? What foods and beverages have worked or make you feel the best? And I think another key thing that I always emphasize in this intro talk, and it's a good reminder if you've heard this talk before though, is to think about literally what is making you feel good, or foods that you have that don't. So I used to eat a lot of those date-based bars like Lara bars or RX bars. And I realized that every time I was eating them, I was starting to get like heartburn, and my stomach was kind of crampy and not feeling good. It took a while for me to like wake up to the fact that when I ate those, even though those could be considered healthy, it wasn't making my body feel good. And so I absolutely had to adjust. And I think that's a key thing that I would love for all of you to do this year, is to really be intentional, and take some moments to think about, when I eat this, how does it make me feel? Do I feel good after, or do I feel kind of just crummy? If you feel crummy, and that includes like protein powders and things like that, then your body doesn't love it. So even though it's maybe a great protein powder or a pre-workout for someone, it may not be perfect for you. So really start, even do it in your notes section on your phone, or just jot down like, I eat this and I felt amazing. I had full energy through my practice or my game, or I started to feel nauseous or crampy or whatever halfway through practice this day after eating this. And you'll start to get a jam on what works and what doesn't. And then to take a moment to think about, like, what is stopping you from eating your best to achieve your goals? And living away from home can sometimes like throw the whole schedule off, right? So how you eat at home versus how you eat at school can be totally different. But that can't always be used as the crutch, right? So a lot of times people use that as an excuse, but really there might be just some other things that you are using that for an excuse for. What could you do to overcome some of that? Plan ahead a little bit better, maybe do a little bit more thoughtful eating, looking at the menus before you go into the dining hall, looking ahead when you're doing travel tournaments and going, okay, where are we eating, and what are things that I can eat there that make me feel good, or what are some better choices at those restaurants? So that's some of the things I want you to consider. One thing that I talk about all the time is that digestion should not hurt. We all get stomach aches from time to time. But if you're consistently not feeling good, if your stomach's consistently not feeling great, if you're not going to the bathroom on a regular basis, none of these things are good. And this is your body trying to tell you something. So that means really being considerate, writing down what you're eating and how your body is responding to it. Going along that same line is thinking about eating real food. So making sure that your whole diet is not just coming out of packages, right? So our body responds best to eating whole foods. And a lot of times we get stuck into thinking that like supplements or packaged goods or things like that is actually going to like make better performance. And a lot of times, a lot of those ingredients in packaged items or in supplements are really hard for our body to digest and to break down, and can actually cause more inflammation in our body too. So as you become an older athlete, a lot of inflammation can lead to a lot of injury and illness and things like that. It's something that we're constantly working with some of our older San Jose Sharks, is constantly trying to reduce inflammation so that it reduces injury and gets them back on the ice sooner. And then, um, you know, another key component here is if you're trying to gain weight, because some of the athletes out there are, you need to actually prepare. Gaining weight doesn't just magically happen. And so you really do need to eat more. We can even do a session on it. We're going to do some short videos throughout the year on different topics. And one can be how to gain weight properly and how to be intentional in that. But just saying, I want to gain weight doesn't just magically happen. So I really like to work with athletes on how they add more calories in and how they add more calories in healthfully. And ultimately, you're responsible for your nutrition. Even my professional athletes, yes, we do feed them, and we feed them a lot, but they do go home. They do go home, and sometimes they eat on the road. So, like my San Jose Sharks right now are in Dallas right now. We fed them at the hotel, but when they're done with the game, they'll get a light meal, but then a lot of times they'll order out. They have to be responsible for what they're choosing in that space. And then they'll leave tomorrow and go to Chicago, and they're kind of left on their own a little bit. We do buy them a post practice meal, but again, a lot of that day is up to them to consider what their nutrition needs need to be. All right. Some of you have seen this slide before, but it's my favorite one. Building blocks, right? Your performance is made out of what you put in. So all nutrition matters, like your goals, your timing, your hydration, micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, and then your macronutrients, which are your carbs, your lipids, and your protein. Lipids, meaning fats. So all of it matters, and how you mix it together is what ultimately leads you to your final goal, right? Is high performance in your sport, high performance as a human, so that your body actually feels good. So thinking about the other side of this chart, what we put in makes up what our body is, and what our body is made up of ultimately is what helps propel us in our sport. So what you put in matters. I've used this slide too. To be honest, I'm not a fan of Quest bars, and actually, First Form bars aren't my favorite either. And the reason that they're not is because when you look at the ingredients list, it's a lot of fake food products. It's a lot of manufactured ingredients that are being shoved in there and being called the food. And a lot of times it's really hard for your body to digest and absorb. It can cause stomach problems. This particular bar has 14 grams of fiber. That's a lot of fiber in one little bar, and especially it's a synthetic fiber. So it can cause a lot of gas and bloating. And then a lot of times people want to know like why their stomach feels full all the time, or why they feel like they have gas and bloating. A lot of times if we're eating a lot of fake food products, that can lead to it. And not every protein does our body feel good on, right? Some people's body doesn't feel great on whey protein, and they have to switch to something else. So again, trying to eat as close to nature as possible. Again, RX bars are closer to nature, so you can actually know that these are made from real foods and not a lot of synthetic products. And then even, things that are even more close to it, right? Like protein bites, and you could even make your own. I know it's a little harder sometimes at school, but the more that you can make your own snacks with real ingredients, the better. All of it works together. We need protein for recovery. We'll talk more about protein at a later time. But protein is the building block of our immune cells and our body. So really, to recover and to build up our body systems, we need to focus on protein and healthy fats. And then our body's muscles love to use, and our brains too, which we need to be smart athletes and smart humans, is carbohydrates. So really limiting carbohydrates as in an elite athlete doesn't really work. It really is the fuel that propels your performance. We'll talk more about carbs today. I'm going to highlight that one just a little bit. And if you have questions around carbs, absolutely ask that in the chat section too. Um, and then fruits and vegetables. So why do we eat fruits and vegetables? Not just because we're nagged about it, but because they actually provide micronutrients and phytonutrients that support all of our metabolic functions. So again, going back to our immune system, which we need, also growth and development, energy systems, all of those things. So it's not just for the fiber, it really is for all of those other micronutrients that support our metabolic functions in our body. So we are going to focus a bit. So we're talking about performance nutrition, and we're going to do some other sessions, whether they're live sessions like this or some recorded videos that you guys can watch, where we're going to highlight some of the other ones where we'll talk about protein, we'll talk about fats and how they play a role. Love talking about hydration. We'll do that as well, and some of the new research that's out there around how to hydrate effectively. But today I'm going to talk about carbs really briefly. And one of the things that has been buzzing around quite a bit is being really low carb. Well, it does depend on your sport. So I will put that out there that not all sports are created equal on how many carbohydrates you need to have. And carbohydrates are found in pretty much every food group except for just pure fat, pure meat. So if you're having like chicken, there's not going to be any carbs in there. And if you're having like butter, it's not going to have any carbs in there. But pretty much every other food group is going to have some level of carbohydrates in there. And that's how important it is in our body to fuel our muscles and to fuel our brain. So what is the impact of low carb? Well, you can have a lower energy and have a sense of fatigue, especially as you're doing your event. This is why sometimes people peter out towards the end of their event and just kind of like get sluggish and don't have enough oomph to get through it. And it's because they don't have enough carbohydrates to fuel those muscles. So you can have that feeling of decreased strength, decreased endurance, increased risk of injury, because if you are fatigued and you have decreased strength, you're definitely at risk for more injury. And then impaired cognitive function. So our brain loves working on glucose, which is the breakdown product of carbohydrate. And when it has to switch over to a different fuel, our brain doesn't work quite as well as it does on carbohydrates. And so those are the whys. But here's a little chart on like, okay, great. How many carbohydrates do you need in a day? Well, it just depends on how much training you're doing, right? So the higher the intensity of your training and the higher the aerobic, so where you're really getting your heart rate up and you're really breathing heavy, so that intensity and that duration, the more of that you have, the more percent of your daily intake should go towards carbohydrate. And a rough estimate, and this talk today doesn't get into all the nitty-gritty numbers, but I usually get people asking me, so what does that mean, Christina? Well, it does mean somewhere you're going to have to convert this to kilograms, so your body weight in kilograms, but it's usually between 6 and 8 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. And that's a rough estimate. I would also say, as you're doing your events, especially if it's a high intensity type activity, we really encourage people to get at least somewhere, and it depends on body size and all of that, but somewhere between 45 and 90 grams of carbohydrates within an hour. Again, the higher the intensity, the more you want to push yourself to those higher ranges. The lower the intensity of the exercise, the less carbohydrates that your body needs. But you still need fuel and you still need energy, especially for anything that's over an hour in duration. Fun fact here is that your brain needs about 130 grams a day of carbohydrates to function effectively. So if you are eating under that, your body has to work in using different fuel sources, and your brain can feel sluggish and fatigued. And obviously not something that you want either. So carbs to support your training load. A rest day or an easy day, you could definitely have a smaller amount of carbs. You're not using as much aerobic energy or muscular strength, so you really can have a lower amount. Moderate training days, kind of widen that out on the plate. And then on hard training days or competition days, you do want to increase your carbohydrates to at least half of your plate or bowl, whatever you are using that day. And here's another good slide here talking about the timing for exercise. I use this one no matter what macronutrient we're talking about, but since we're highlighting carbohydrates today, when we think about those plates that I just showed you, you are going to want to have one of those plates where half of your plate is carbohydrates 2 to 3 hours before your event. Okay. And then about 30 minutes before, and this can be in any form. This could be eating half of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, having goos or gels if you eat those, or a granola bar. But it could also be a carbohydrate beverage, right? So a sports drink that you're making that provides those carbohydrates 30 minutes before. Anything, you know, over 60 minutes, again, you're going to want to try to get at least 45 grams of carbs per hour into your body, more if you are a higher intensity activity. Anything under 60 minutes, you really don't need any carbohydrates during that exercise or activity. And then recovery. Again, today we're talking about recovery too. So 30 minutes after, you're going to want to make sure that you eat carbohydrates because you deplete your muscles, which store glycogen, which store carbohydrate. So glycogen is the storage form of carbohydrate, and you deplete that out. Your body uses it as you're doing the activity. So again, you're only as good tomorrow as how you do your repletion the day before. So let's say you work out really, really hard, or you have a really tough, game or tournament, and then you don't refuel, your body is running on empty the next day. So how great is your performance going to be? Not very great. So again, there's no prizes for underfueling, zero. So, and then, if you can, depending on how late it is, when you get back, but it'd be great if you can have another balanced meal. If it's late in the day, then you're going to want to try to hit those higher end to even more 70 to 150 grams of carbohydrates before you go to bed. So not always does this work because sometimes people are like, okay, I'm going to bed now, so I can't eat a whole big balanced meal. So you kind of have to do quicker snacks, whether it's a sandwich and a carbohydrate beverage or oatmeal and a piece of fruit, something like that. Sometimes there isn't time to always have that balanced meal. And here's the rest of them. So fat and protein, you guys can look that over too. We'll talk more about that in another session. Again, we don't really take in fat during our training. We do it during our meal times on either side of it because it can cause digestive problems. And then protein is always important. Again, it also helps level out your blood sugar. So having a little bit of protein with carbohydrates is a good thing so that your blood sugar doesn't just spike up and then drop down. So let's spend some time talking about nutrition for recovery. And I think that this is an important point here is that training intensity and duration stimulate muscle and neuromuscular damage up to 48 hours post game. So those metabolic processes are really tough on the body. And you guys are all young and still growing. So we need to get you recovered as fast as we can so that your body can actually use some of its energy and its building blocks for growth and development as well. So proper recovery is crucial for lowering risk of injury and optimizing next day performance. This is the one that I use with the San Jose Sharks. So it's branded. It's right. We actually put this slide up all the time on our boards. Is the 5 R's of recovery, and the 5 R's are replenish. So again, needing carbohydrates to replenish those muscles that get depleted. Rehydrate with fluid, electrolytes, depending on your sweat loss. We use H drop now, which is a way to measure hydration status, and it is fascinating how much sodium and water our players are losing per hour. And I can happily talk about some of those numbers later if you guys are interested. Rebuild. So obviously you need protein to help rebuild those muscles. Obviously there's wear and tear when you're doing your sport too. So that's what the protein does, is goes in there and repairs muscle tissue. And then reinforce, building up immune cells, nervous system with antioxidant rich foods. So going back to those fruits and vegetables. And then rest. There is nothing better than rest. You do all those things and then you allow your body to just soak it all in. That's the 5 hours of recovery. And you really need all of them together to optimize your next day. Again, we've talked about antioxidants a bit, and talking about why do we eat our fruits and vegetables, but I think here's some of the sciencey stuff around it. So when we work out, whether we're doing a lot of aerobic or we're getting pounded in different ways, right, depending on the intensity of our sport, we build up these free radicals. So these are things that can damage our tissues, can damage our immune cells, and again, when your body has a lot of these oxidative stress um, caused by these free radicals, eating fruits and vegetables that have antioxidants can go in and neutralize that. And so that's why we want to inhibit oxidative stress, neutralize that damage that's going on. It'll help decrease muscle soreness and damage to tissue. So the foods that you want to focus on are the dark fruits and vegetables, and eating a variety of color too, because all those colors are where those phytonutrients are, and they're all different and they all do different things in the body. So that's why we want to eat a variety of food too. There's some vitamins and minerals too that are really important in recovery, and that's vitamin A, C, E. Talk a little bit about magnesium in a little bit, but that's a great mineral for recovery as well. So we talk about tart cherry juice all the time. You can eat tart cherries as well. You don't have to just have the juice. But again, so like these dark fruits and vegetables, but specifically tart cherries, they have a phytonutrient in them called anthocyanins, and they have a really high amount of antioxidants, higher than most fruits and vegetables. And so when we take in tart cherry juice, and we do this after our working out, so part of our recovery, it decreases oxidative stress, decreases muscle damage, soreness, and inflammation, and so improves our recovery and strength and improves our blood flow. Now, we add this to our smoothies all the time, our recovery smoothies for our athletes. In addition to some of our athletes will use collagen peptides and magnesium. If so, we've got magnesium powder that we put in there, but you can take a magnesium pill too. But all of those things will help with muscle recovery. We do like to train our athletes on how to build better oatmeal bowls, better smoothies, things like that. So I do love this slide. If you love oatmeal, that's amazing. You're going to get your carbohydrates there. You're going to get your soluble fiber there. But where are you getting your color, right? So add some fruit to it, or have fruit on the side if you don't want it in your oatmeal. Add a little more protein to your oatmeal. So add some collagen peptides in there, and now you've got a high protein oatmeal. Add some more fiber and magnesium by adding things like pumpkin seeds, healthy fats like walnuts or peanut butter, and then potassium, which is really important for muscle performance as well. And you find that obviously in lots of fruits and vegetables, but sliced bananas make the most sense in oatmeal. I cannot talk about recovery without talking about sleep. So I know sleep is a really challenging thing sometimes for a variety of reasons, but making a good sleep environment, wearing noise canceling headphones, or things that you can do to sort of block out the things that are holding you back from sleep. I mean, the goal really is 8 to 10 hours to have optimal recovery. I do know that that can be a challenge sometimes, but that's the goal, right? uh, you're definitely going to have better performance. If you have poor sleep, it's tougher to think, it's tougher to be fast, and it's easier to get more exhausted during your performance. So avoiding late day caffeine, sugar, or heavy meals before bed. So this is why if you have a game late in the day, you don't want to just like bulk up on a bunch of food and try to go to sleep. It's good if you can have maybe 2 mini meals. But again, I don't want you to not eat. So I hope that you're hearing this. Try not to have just big, heavy meals, but I definitely want you to eat, even if it's later in the day. That's better than not eating. And hopefully you can still sleep well. Um, if you do want to try something to help you sleep a little bit better, and also your body needs it, it's magnesium glycinate. It's a mineral. It's involved in 300 metabolic processes in the body, so it's pretty crucial. You can take this either in powder form and throw it in a smoothie, or you can take it in a capsule form, 200 to 300 milligrams daily. Definitely take it at night because it definitely has a calming effect on the body. So taking it in the morning is not a good idea. And I know this isn't the full talk. This was kind of the intro to nutrition, and you guys will have this. But to just talk about, okay, so if we're talking about recovery, what is our goal to have for recovery? So this is even on light training days. Um, you would want to have 3 to 5 grams per kilogram per day if it's of carbohydrates. If it's a game day, you're definitely going to want to have more carbohydrates than that. But if we're thinking about recovery or resting, that lower end is the lowest end you want to go to. And then protein, again, super important. This is what repairs damaged muscles, and we want to keep building lean body mass. We don't want to keep breaking it down. So anywhere between 2 and 2.5 grams per kilogram per day. I don't really get hot and bothered around fats. Just keep them healthy, have healthy fats as much as possible. Olive oil, avocado oil, nuts and seeds, like eating them in their whole forms. Fish, if you like it, or think about taking omega-3 supplements if you don't like eating fatty fish or a lot of nuts. That might be the way to go to get the healthy fats in there and to decrease inflammation. So, what should meals look like? Well, we talked about those plates, and it may not totally look like this all the time, especially when you're eating at the dorms, but you can kind of see how these plates are separated out, right? We've got protein, we've got some color, and we've got some starch. Same with this bowl here, we've got some protein, some color, even more protein with the beans, healthy fats with the guacamole. This is why I love burrito bowls, having eggs in the morning with some color in there. And when you cook on your own, I love doing like one sheet pan meals where you have chicken and potatoes, and you can even add a vegetable on there. But that's just kind of the formula right there is some of these pictures that you see here with the protein and the carbohydrates and the color. I talk about this all the time because I love it. So bone broth, when we talk about recovery, so bone broth is almost like lotion for the inside of your body. It helps heal up a lot of things, makes your digestion feel good. It's hydrating because it's broth. It usually has electrolytes in there too, which your body needs. And so I can't say enough about how now there's a lot of different varieties and brands out there. I put this over here as it's a funny name. It's Dr. Kellyanne is the name of the bone broth, but you can buy it in packets. You can buy it on Amazon. So all you have to do is heat up water, throw that packet in, stir it up, and then drink it. But there's lots of different flavors. So if you don't like one flavor, try something else. But this is a great thing to have as part of your recovery because it does all the things you need it to do. It helps your digestion, it helps hydrate you, helps get you electrolytes, and helps repair muscles and your skin and your joints. I mean, this is the stuff. Now, not everybody likes the flavor of it, so try around with different brands. And then my favorite slide on building a smoothie. So we talk about recovery nutrition. This is a great way to just kind of chuck a bunch of stuff in there. This is different ideas that you can put in there. Obviously, don't put cold brew coffee in for recovery and when you're going to go to sleep at night. There's lots of other cool things out there too. You obviously could add tart cherry juice in there, which we do. Um, but this kind of puts in all of those components that we were talking about into just one easy to take down post workout meal. And I try to keep enough time for the questions and make sure that we do that. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Well, in a second, if you want to capture this, you can. I know that Joe will have these slides and a recording of this video for you guys to watch, so you can see my contact information there. But I think an important thing for you all to know is that I'm here for you.